I think NAD did the industry a huge favor by, by being the first one and to take all the flack for Class D amplifiers, even when that criticism wasn't fair anymore.
Welcome to StereoNET. We're here in Melbourne at the StereoNET Hi-Fi and AV show, and I'm fortunate to be joined here in the studio with Cas Oostvogel, the product manager for NAD Electronics and part of the Lenbrook group. Welcome down under, Cas. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for letting me be here, and my first time back in Australia in many, many years.
Good to have you.
So it's great to be here.
Good to have you. As part of the Lenbrook group, NAD celebrated 50 years of success last year. This is a real achievement. How did NAD help audio enthusiasts celebrate the milestone with tempting products?
I like to think that we always have tempting products. That's part of the reason why we managed to achieve 50 years. But of course, with your 50th birthday, you have to do something special. And one of those special things was the NAD C3050 in its limited edition. And of course, the 50 years was, in any case, the reason why we did the 3050. If you look at the rest of the product range, we introduced some other products like the C389, but in all fairness, it's also a logical extension on the road that we were already at. Just before the M23 came out, which I think is really a benchmark in amplifier design. There's many companies that do a purifier eigentakt implementation. Power supply, pretty box around it, and that's it. But I like to think we went a step further with it, in recognition of what we are and what we do in all of those 50 years.
What new products from NAD and your Australian distributor, Amber Technology, are you showcasing this weekend?
Really proud to show the NAD M66 preamplifier, and it basically is three things in one, if you like. On one hand, it's a pure audiophile preamp. You can set it in a pure bypass mode, whereby you switch off all the Wi-Fi and RF from Bluetooth, straight analog path, bypassing any ADCs and DACs and what have you, using a very high precision, very, very low noise resistor ladder volume control, because only that will give you the low thermal noise that you're looking for. Conventional volume pots will be too noisy, little details like that. And then on the other hand, if you do want to go digital, and that of course is another really major part of this amplifier, obviously BlueOS streaming on board. And then I think there's two interesting features, one of which is what we've dubbed DDH, Digital Dynamic Headroom, which basically allows you to shift the entire digital register by 3 dB down before it goes into the DAC, so that if you have digital overs, whereby between two samples, particularly with lower sampling frequencies, it cannot take a peak, and so it will come across, and that is intersample clipping. And that is a sort of sound that you will actually hear. And I think it's also part of the reason why we appreciate higher sampling frequencies more, because obviously you can do more samples. So by lowering it 3 dB, we create the headroom, and by the same token, we add the 3 dB back on the analog side. You could argue that will impact your signal-to-noise ratio by 3 dB. If you're in the 120 region, it's moot. So that's one thing. The other aspect is, of course, direct live bass control. And to my knowledge, we are the only company to do full bass control for 4 subwoofers in a 2-channel product. This is something that may be up against the conventional thinking for many audiophiles. And you know what? I totally get that. Because integrating subwoofers in a conventional two-channel system is a nightmare. And if anything, you're going to make things worse rather than improve them. Particularly now we have an awful lot of subwoofers that use DSP, which will also introduce a time lag. You need to put your subwoofers a lot closer in order to get some basic time alignment done. But this is exactly where direct will actually, or bass control done well, will improve bass response and also the timing of bass, which is exactly what's conventional wisdom says is something that you're going to kill with subwoofers. And when I say it makes a really big difference, it's something that you probably just need to try and experiment with for yourself. The fast, bang, quick, not just time aligned, but also with group delay filtering, matching the phase behavior of the subs with the main speakers. So the timing is exactly right. That is it. The only handicap at the moment I think we have is that there's not very many, let's say, more audiophile subwoofers. Subwoofers are still built and associated with AV. Therefore, big bass ports, drone cones, passive radiators, which are great for earthquakes, but not necessarily for quick, fast, snappy, tight bass.
The NAD product line is still very broad. From amplifiers to turntables to home theatre. How does NAD look at evolving ways of how people of all ages listen to music, and how do you adapt to those habits?
I think depending on which group you look at, things do not really change that much. I think within our industry, there's a group that buy the equipment to listen to music. By the same token, I also think there's an equally large group that plays music to listen to their system. And we try to cater for the first group. And of course, doing the second thing, I think that's part of the hobby. And I myself am guilty of that as well. Not just out of profession, but I'm curious, I'm interested in this stuff. But first and foremost, it's music. So we also want to observe how people enjoy their music, and streaming has become a really large integral part of that. We were up against MP3, which certainly in the beginning was absolutely abysmal. And then at least we went to lossless, stored on one's computer or a NAS or whatever. And then we took a step back again with streaming services with lower sound quality, but at least it was a smorgasbord of any music you would like, and how that further evolves. And that's why also with Blue Sound, we from day one, when we decided to go into streaming, high-res. And so that is something that we feel and think is going to carry on, and more people will be more aware of that. So that's part of the direction that we're going.
Okay. Modular Design Construction, or MDC. So that's the acronym that NAD introduced way back in 2006.
Yeah.
Offers hi-fi users or owners of NAD products a cost-effective upgrade pathway. What does it mean now to a NAD owner that they can update via an MDC module to keep up with technology or interfaces or music services?
I can give you a very concrete example. So somebody that bought in 2007 an NAD T775 AV receiver, when we only had HDMI 1.2, we did have Dolby Digital, but not really much more. There was the first form of DTS. That was pretty much it. If you got one of those receivers today with those modules that it was fitted with back in 2007, you can do a swap of all of those modules and make it do Dolby Atmos and DTS:X, give it Wi-Fi, give it Bluetooth. It will do BlueOS for you, and it will do direct to boot as well. And I think that's actually quite a feat, that you can update your product to that really up-to-date level as to where you want to be with modern receivers as well. I also got to be honest, and in a way it's been also very good for us, because it didn't necessitate that our amplifiers have always been good, that we needed to completely redo completely new AV receivers, but by fitting them with the right modules, we could achieve the goals that we set out to do, and also have the features that people want and need. So yeah, it has served as well.
NAD is now quite well established in multi-channel, multi-room markets. You've aligned with some automation solutions, Control 4, Crestron, for example. How important is home automation market for Lenbrook? And I guess expanding that to its Blue OS modules and for potentially a total home audio solution?
I think we're pretty much there, because if you look at it, Lenbrook is obviously a North American company where CI is already very, very big. And if you look at all of the control systems that we support, as very few that are not on the list. Since last ISE, there's also full support for KNX, the European protocol, and I don't know to which extent that may play a role here in Australia, but also like RTI, besides the ubiquitous Control 4 is another one that we support and that we do. For NAD, we also have a line which really is dedicated for custom install, 8-channel amplifiers, the 8120, 120 watts. Pretty good sounding amplifier. You can bridge it, will put out huge amounts of power. It comes with a full parametric equalizer. It's 1U high. And we also have an audiophile version of that, which is called the 8150, which uses the high quality Encore modules as well, all in one chassis, in this case 2U high. So we think that the same progression in sound quality is going to carry on more and more and more. And with the 4-zone streamer that we have, the amplifiers, a 16-channel amplifier, that market is important for us, and is something that we now see happening in Europe as well, hence the support for KNX.
NAD was an early adopter of Class D amplification. What were the challenges? What were the opportunities? And when moving on from a standard Class AB to Class D amplifier design, and how much more can be eked out of Class D?
Yeah, that's a good one. We'd always been eyeing Class D and its developments really from the late 90s when the first small Class D modules came out. They sounded pretty abysmal. But as a technology, it was certainly interesting. And so we really kept an eye on what was going on. But really, up until the mid-2000s, every Class D amplifier really couldn't match a half-decent Class AB amplifier. So that's when we did the M2, and the M2 was really special in its own right. It being a direct digital design, so basically a huge power DAC, and it also employed feedback. And that really changed the game. Signal to noise ratio, distortion, suddenly at a much lower level. And I think, well, perhaps with one or two other amplifiers, they were the first truly audiophile Class D amplifiers. And if you read the reviews in StereoFile, I believe StereoNET had a go at it as well 13 years ago, 15 years ago almost, with the M2. It was a sensational amplifier, and that really encouraged us to move on with Class D. Eric Edwardson, who has sadly passed away in the meantime, but he was really into this technology as well. I wanted to understand as much as possible, and he also came in contact with Bruno Putzijs, whom you may know from IPEX, UCD and NCORE, and later his involvement with Eigentakt. And that really worked out well, and that also meant that we not just buy the modules off of IPEX, but also make subtle changes to them to give them just a little bit more of that NAD flavor, particularly when it comes close to that clipping point. Our modules behave slightly different from the off-the-shelf ones. And that has been designed in. You want to give it that slightly more analog character. I think NAD did the industry a huge favor by being the first one and to take all the flack for Class D amplifiers, even when that criticism wasn't fair anymore. So here we are.
Thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, and with new developments, you can see that Purify, Eigentakt, who are in close contact with them, they're still working on stuff. There are other technologies, such as Exine, which we carefully started employing in our products, which is again a direct digital design, so like a power DAC. Yeah, we're gonna carry on with that and continue to be a leader, I would think, in that area.
We started off talking about 50 years of NAD, and you launched your commemorative C3050 amplifier, as you mentioned, with its retro appeal, which has been heralded across the hi-fi globe. Can you provide some insight of how the C3050 came about and what's special about it?
I can, and it's a project really dear and close to my heart, and it's great to see that it's been so well accepted. And when we first started the project, one of the most obvious things to do was to replicate the NAD 3020, which is of course the legendary amplifier of which NAD built 1.2, 1.3 million. We lost count after that. But by the same token, we thought if you're going to make a commemorative model, 3020 is still a really good amplifier, but frankly speaking, you want it to be a little bit more exciting in the way it looks. And that's why we chose the 3030, because technically it really is the predecessor which kicked off the 3020. Same output devices, larger the power supply, capable of delivering current, low noise, all of the traits. The only thing that was done for the 3020 is to dress it down a bit, leave the VU meters out and other inputs that you may not necessarily need. But from an optical point of view, we loved the 3030, also because of its VU meters. So that's why we decided it was a good compromise between a 70s look, NAD performance, so that's why we did the model the way we did it. And yeah, it took a couple of stages to get there, but we did it.
Yep. The Lenbrook Group itself is celebrating also a long milestone in the audio world of 45 years young. The news broke recently about Lenbrook's acquisition of MQA. Can you tell us a little more of how this would benefit Lenbrook from acquiring MQA and what that might look like as far as implementation in the future?
Of course, we were one of the, perhaps the first adapter of MQA as a technology. And MQA has its there are people that criticize MQA. Okay, that is their perfect good right. What I know is that MQA or non-MQA tracks, I prefer to listen to the MQA tracks. And I think it goes beyond just that semi high resolution that is hidden in the last bit. It also has to do with the way MQA looks at digital filtering and understanding what has happened at the mastering stage, which perhaps makes the biggest impact. Now, MQA is a healthy company and was a healthy company at the time when one major investor pulled out to look at other things to do. For Lenbrook, there was an opportunity, not just because of MQA, but it really consisted of three things. The second part of it is we didn't just take over the rights to MQA, the entire engineering team from MQA is now part of Lenbrook as well. So they now work for Lenbrook, and their not inconsiderable talents will really come into their own with new generation products. Then there's another aspect to this, and that is a encoding scheme called SLC6, which has also been developed by the clever boffins from MQA, which really is remarkable if you hear it, that you can have 192 kilohertz 24-bit stream, absolutely bit perfect. And as the bandwidth decreases, it will adapt itself as well, right down to, I believe, something in low area of 600 kilobit per second without interruption, which when it comes to doing streaming, and that can be in all areas, that can be from your phone to your headphones, it can be indeed from your Wi-Fi through your Wi-Fi network to your streamer. So in every aspect, that technology is usable, and that's why we see also a lot of opportunities. And last but not least, also for MQA, can be used in various aspects. In Japan, MQA is big, even as MQA CDs. So all of these sort of things may well happen. We see with these three aspects of it, MQA was a great acquisition.
The first 51 years of NAD has been a success. Where does NAD see the hi-fi market heading, and how will NAD be a part of it?
I think we'll always be able to divvy up the market with, let's say, true hi-fi enthusiasts that really want the best sound possible and go through almost any length to get there. One aspect I think is changing is that people are getting more conscious of quality and at the same time also of convenience. So that is why we need to be able to marry the two. I think with BlueOS, which of course we share with Bluesound and a few other brands as well, that convenience part and easy streaming is being done. And that is going to continue further in development. Only a couple of days ago we released a new BlueOS version, 4.0. So going down that route, I think, is one of the more important things, and to carry that on without losing sight on why NAD exists in the first place, and that is value for money, really good sound performance. That will remain. And as long as we do that, I think we have a bright future.
Finally, we're asking our guests to put forward one question to ask other audio equipment manufacturers in our interviews. Without knowing who the brand or guest will be, okay, which one question would you ask the next guest?
Yeah, okay, so one of my gripes in the audio industry is that there is a lot of myths, and I wouldn't mind if the number of myths were a little bit decluttered, so that we have a little bit more of a straightforward approach to the subject of getting really good audio. So my question would be is, what are you going to do in terms of real design focused with perhaps even that you can back it up rather than just subjective?
It's a bit like Mythbusters, if you've ever seen that TV show.
Yeah, I've seen that TV show, yeah.
Audio Mythbusters, okay.
Yeah, it's putting it a bit strong. So I think there's always a bit of magic around this, and we should keep that as well. But there are sometimes aspects of it that I see things happening that really want to make me tear my hair out.
Yep, I did that already. So yeah. Cas, on behalf of StereoNET, thank you for making the trip to Australia for the StereoNET Hi-Fi and AV show, and your excellent insight into NAD's 50th anniversary and the Lenbrook Group. if viewers want more information about NAD products, where can they go for that?
Well, of course, we have Ambertech, our distributors here in Australia, who have taken over from Convoy. And so a lot of that knowledge from Convoy has been transferred to Ambertech as well. So that is a long history that goes back all the way back, I believe, to 1975 when NAD was first distributed here in Australia, which makes it one of the longest standing NAD countries. So we're really pleased that NAD is now with Amber, because they know what they're doing. They are dedicated, they are there for the customer to help them out and answer all of the tech and tricky questions that may happen and may occur. So no, it's good.
Okay, thank you.
Nope, my pleasure.